Alright guys, BLM here, back with a new video. In this video, we're back with more of my dream casting series, this time moving on to Survivor Early Boots. So we're going to follow pretty much the same rules that I had with my original casting video. So here we'll be including people that did not make the jury. Again, there was a debate for me whether the merge should be the breakoff point or the jury. I decided to make the jury the breakoff point, as there were some people I wanted to consider that made the merge, but not the jury. And also for this video, I decided to not include first boots. Now, last time I did this video, I did include Reem Daily. However, outside of that, I didn't really include any other first boots on the list itself. And for this one, I'm just going to exclude first boots entirely, just because I feel like it kind of ruins the point of the early boot season. I feel like it just takes away material from a potential first boot season if they were to ever do that. So for early boots, I feel like it's best to just leave first boots out of it. I also decided to only include one-time players because I feel like, again, this is kind of a season that the point of it is to give these people that didn't have super strong runs their first time around, give them another chance at the game, and to have people that have already had that second chance, someone like a Russell Swan, it just felt like weird to me, so didn't include returning players either. So those are disclaimers here. We will be running through each season one by one, just like most of my other casting videos, talking about who I considered from each cast and who I ended up putting on my own personal cast. So let's start off with Survivor Borneo, which I surprisingly put no one on here from Borneo. I really thought I was going to, because last time I did put Gretchen on the cast. I did consider Gretchen here, however, for me, I've never been a big Gretchen person. I feel like she's the type of person that, like, if she were to play again, she wouldn't really adapt to the modern game as well as I would like. So because that left her off, considered someone like a Joel, who I thought was a player that was ahead of his time at that point. However, he just didn't make the cut. And I also considered Ramona, as I know she's still somewhat involved in the Survivor community, but again, didn't make the cut at the end of the day. From Australian Outback, the only person I considered was Marilyn Mad Dog Hershey, but it's like, she's probably beyond the point where it's like, do we really need to see her back? So cut her as well. Now from Survivor Africa, and had a couple contenders here. First up, I did consider Lindsay Richter, and she was a bit close to making the cast. I mean, she was definitely a strong contender, because again, she was a great character back then. It's obviously been many, many years. So it would be interesting to see how she's changed as a person since then. I'm sure she's changed a lot. But at the end of the day, for me, it just didn't fit the cast. I just felt like there were more people that were locks from later seasons. And I also considered Jessie Camacho, because I feel like Jessie Camacho is another one that kind of got screwed over on her season because she came in very sick. And it would be a nice arc to see her return now and see how she would do. But it's, again, at the end of the day, I don't think she would adapt to the modern game either, so didn't put her on. However, I did put one person from Africa on the cast, and that person is Clarence. And I've always been a big Clarence fan. I loved Clarence when I first watched Survivor Africa. He was the merge boot of that season, and I think he's another one that kind of gets screwed over. But I mean, mind you, some of that was his own doing. I do think him eating food while the tribe was away, that wasn't a great situation. But I think outside of that, I do think he is a person that had some potential within the game and had some decent thoughts for the game. He just wasn't able to execute that because he didn't have any social capital on that season. But I do think on a return, it would be a bit interesting. Plus, also, he's been a part of the Survivor community recently, especially with this talk about diversity in Survivor. Really, I think Clarence is someone that I would like to see back again, even though, from what I understand, he doesn't want to be. But oh well, he made my dream cast here. Now, we actually have a decent stretch of seasons here where no one from these casts made it onto my dream cast, but we're still going to talk through them anyway. So for MARQUESAS, really only consider Gina Cruz. I think she's someone that I guess would be kind of interesting on a return, but not enough to really take the spot of like any of these other women that I would rather see more so. From Thailand, I did consider a couple people. I considered Rob Zabatnik just because it would be funny. Though I feel like Rob Zabatnik now probably isn't nearly as funny as he was when he was younger. Especially because like the reason he was funny is because he was such a doofus. Well, like now I would assume he's more mature. You would hope. Also, I consider Tanya Vance, because Tanya Vance is another one I think was kind of screwed over on her season, was kind of sick coming into it, got a very bad starting tribe, but at the end of the day, again, I would just rather see other people back. From Survivor the Amazon, I mean, people from the pre-jury of the Amazon weren't the most interesting people in my opinion. I did kind of consider Dan Liu, but I mean, not really. Let's just move on. From Paul Islands, there were a few considerations. I considered Trish and I considered Michelle. Both people who I thought were pretty fun characters, and I thought Trish was actually a decent player on her season. However, do I need them back at this point in time? Probably not. Now from Vanuatu, and one major consideration here, I really wanted to put Rory on the cast. I love Rory as a character. He really makes a lot of the pre-merge of Vanuatu, because, I mean, to be honest, the pre-merge of Vanuatu is pretty dry outside of the character moments from him. So I really wanted to put him here. However, there just weren't enough spots. And also, I just feel like, again, he's one of these people that, like, I don't think he's ever going to play well. Like, he's not a good player. Like, he's never going to adapt well to the modern strategic landscape of the game. However, if I did have a couple more spots, I probably would have tried to squeeze him onto the cast. Now for Palau, where I had a lot of considerations. Again, didn't put anyone on, but one person very similar to Rory. Again, if I had a couple more spots, I would have put James Miller on the cast. Again, hilarious character. Really fun personality on that season. Had some really funny confessionals. He also has that really fun storyline where, like, pretty much everything he says in confessional ends up being wrong. So that's really fun. Like, really, James Miller's a fantastic character, but again, like, is he going to play the game to the standards of what the modern landscape survivor really needs out of him? Probably not. So because that, he didn't make my cut either. But again, if I had more spots, he easily would have made it. Now from Guatemala, had some considerations, and we're finally back to someone that did make the cut. But the people that didn't make the cut, we got Brandon. I think Brandon is someone that, while he isn't the most interesting character, I think he did have some pretty fun one-liners here and there, and I think he was actually a pretty good player. But at the end of the day, again, is he a necessity for this early boots cast? Probably not. I also considered Amy O'Hara, and I really thought Amy O'Hara was going to make it. But again, this is another situation where it's like, how is she going to adapt to the modern landscape of the game? I don't think she's going to. So because that, she didn't make the cut for me. But the person from Guatemala I did put this person on my other cast as well, and that is Brian Corridon. And I think Brian Corridon is someone that is still within the Survivor community, still watching Survivor, still has a pretty good mind for the strategic game of Survivor. I think Brian Corridon is someone I would love to see play again. I think it would be really interesting to see him get a better shake within the game, because obviously he was given a really bad tribe swap and even made the best out of that situation. He was a really innovative thinker for his time. I mean, I believe he was one of the first people to try to execute a plurality vote. So, I mean, that's something. So, I mean, like, Brian Corridon, for me, really interesting player, someone I would definitely like to see back. So he made my cut. From Survivor Panama, had a couple considerations. I did consider Bob Dog. And again, this is another situation where it's like, is Bob Dog really going to play the game that hard? Probably not. I mean, he seems like a great guy. I think he was a fun character at points throughout that season. But it's like, at the end of the day, I think there's other bigger characters than him. And also, I think there's other people that are more active within the game than him. So because of that, he didn't make my cut. But I did put someone from Panama on my cast. And I'm actually surprised they made my cast here, but I'm pretty happy they did. And that is the first woman that's going to be on the cast here, and that is Misty Giles. And Misty's someone that I think is kind of forgotten at this point, but she was kind of the proto-Parvati. I mean, I guess you could say Julie Berry was the proto-Parvati, but Misty was someone that obviously came the season right before Parvati, but also tried to play this kind of flirtatious sort of game. The problem is that she went out third, and also she was another person that got relatively unlucky early on, where she goes to exile. So they think she has an idol. She tries to lie about it. And like, overall, I did feel like she was a bit of a savvy player, especially for that time, for Panama especially. I felt like she was someone that was actively willing to play strategic elements of the game, but never really got the chance to do so. I think on her return, it would be interesting. Obviously, it's been years. I mean, I believe she's married with kids now, and like, who knows if she would really still have that drive to play at this point. However, but again, it's my Dreamcast. Why not? Let's put Misty Giles on the cast. Now from Cook Islands, had a couple considerations. First up, we have Billy Garcia. And I mean, no, I'm good. I mean, like, Billy Garcia, obviously fantastic character, had that really spectacular moment in Cook Islands. But it's like, on a return, it's like, is Billy Garcia ever doing well? No, he's not. I'd rather just leave him off. But I did put one person on this cast, but he didn't make my more realistic early boots cast. I guess it's probably because, like, I mean, he's probably never coming back. But Dreamcast, why not? I put Cowboy on the cast. I think Cowboy, again, another fantastic character, but also someone that's still willing to play the game. Now, does he have some misguided strategic thoughts? Definitely. Does he have the best, like, social gameplay? Absolutely not. However, I mean, he is the one to come up with the split vote plan. Mind you, I think everyone would have thought of the split vote plan at some point, but still, I mean, he's the first one to conceptualize it on the show. That's cool in its own right. Plus, also, he's just a really wacky, crazy character. So I think because he has the ability to do both, he easily made my cut here. Now from Survivor Fiji, had a few considerations. No one made the cut. I did consider Sylvia just because it would be funny. Again, another kind of more wacky character. Not really because she's this like crazy zany person like Cowboy is, but more so because she's like this type A personality that really didn't mix well with her cast. But at the end of the day, again, like, do I need her back? Probably not. I did also consider Anthony, though. I think Anthony's a person that I wouldn't mind seeing back again, because I do feel like, kind of like Clarence, like I don't feel like he was given that much of a shot from his other players. I mean, he was always perceived as weak. But he's just someone that was a fan of Survivor, and which is very rare for Survivor Fiji. And I think he's someone that like could have a good strategic game. However, for me, again, like it was pretty much between him and Clarence. I decided to go with Clarence mostly because Clarence is an older school player, and I want to have at least one old school player on the cast. So Anthony didn't make it because of that, but he was definitely someone I strongly considered. Now from China, didn't really consider anyone. I mean, you have someone like an Aaron, who I think has a great arc. I think he has a great downfall on that season, but is he someone that I need to see play again? Not really, because I think outside of like the downfall that he has in that final episode, I don't feel like he's that interesting of a character. And you have someone like a Leslie, who's like an interesting character at points, gets taken out pretty early. I mean, she's still active within the Survivor community, but again, I don't feel like I need to see her back though. Now from Survivor Micronesia, had a few considerations. I did consider Joel and Mikey B, two people who were like leaders of their tribes, two people who played pretty hard on their seasons, and I think wouldn't be terrible on the return to see if they could play better. Probably not, but at the end of the day, again, didn't make the cut. But for me, same person from my previous casting video. The person I did bring back here was Tracy Hughes Wolf. I think Tracy is, again, one of the most underrated players in the history of the show. I mean, at some point I want to do a top 10 pre-merge boots video, and I haven't really thought about that video really at all, but I would assume Tracy would be very high on that list. Like, I think she's someone that started off the game in the minority, but was able to control votes despite being initially put in a very bad situation. I mean, the way that she was able to manipulate Joel into doing whatever she wanted was incredible. And even post-swap, even the bad position she was given, she almost flipped the entire game against Ozzy. And if it wasn't for Chet wanting to quit the game, I mean, she more than likely pulls that off. So for me, I think Tracy should be given another shot. It would be really fun to see it. So for me, she easily made my cut. From Survivor Gabon, I only had one real consideration. That person did make my casting, and this is another person that also made my cast last time, and that is Ace. I think Ace is one of these forgotten characters at this point, because like he was someone that was a pretty big villain in the pre-merge of Gabon, but then was in consideration for Heroes versus Villains, but then after that, it's like kind of dropped off the map. And I feel like Ace is someone that I would still like to see back if we were given a season like this. I mean, to be honest, like any other concept of a season, probably not. I don't think he's big enough of a name to really warrant a return on anything other than like a pre-merge sort of season. But I think Ace is a fun character. He was a fun character in Gabon. He's someone that was very strategically savvy. The problem is that he's pretty bad socially, and the fact that he loses the trust of his closest ally in Sugar is pretty bad on his part. But again, I think he's someone that is very savvy strategically, and I think him on a return would be still really interesting. Plus, also, again, he's a fun character, so Ace made my cut. Now we're back to another little stretch of seasons that no one made the cut for me, but again, still going to talk about them. We got Tocantins. I considered someone like a Spencer, who was a big like super fan of Survivor. So it'd be interesting to see him back, but didn't make it. From Samoa, I did consider Betsy. I think she did have some strong game sense, it's just that she couldn't execute anything. So I think on a return, she wouldn't be bad, but didn't make my cut here. And then we got Survivor Nicaragua, where I had a few considerations. Again, no one made it. I got Tyrone, who I think is kind of an underrated character in the history of the show. I mean, mind you, he's like one of these people that has like a lot of like very minor moments, like nothing too major, but again, like I think he had some fun moments here and there, but didn't make the cut here. I consider Jimmy T. Jimmy T would just be funny, but again, Jimmy T's never doing well in Survivor, so didn't make it on. And I considered someone like a Jill, who I think is someone that has a lot more potential in the game of Survivor, but also just wasn't that great of a character, so she didn't make the cut for me. Now from Redemption Island, we do have a few considerations. I did consider Christina Kell, who I think is one of these people that had a pretty good mind for the game. It's just that she was up against Boston Rob, and obviously like the cult that he was able to put together already at that point in the season, like she was never really going to do well. But at the end of the day, she didn't make the cut here. But for me, same person as last time. I did put Stephanie Valencia on my cast, and I've always been a big Stephanie Valencia fan. I think she's someone that, again, has a decent mind for the game and is also a fun character. It's kind of the best of both worlds. I actually wanted her back for Survivor Second Chance, even though that didn't happen. So again, for me, early boots here, I think she needs to be there. Now from South Pacific, we do have a few considerations. None of them made the cut though. I consider Papa Bear, because again, I think Papa Bear is a fun character, but at the end of the day, didn't make it on. Consider someone like a Christine, who is very close to making it on. She was definitely much closer to making the list. But it's one of those situations where it's like, is Christine going to play the modern game? Is she ever going to actually do well within the game of Survivor? Probably not. So she didn't make the cut because of that. And same thing goes for someone like a Stacey Powell, who again, fun character, but never going to play the game well. And then we had someone like a Michaela, who I think has a lot more potential within the game, but again, not really a necessity for me personally. Now for One World. I didn't consider anyone for One World. I mean, I would have considered Monica if she hadn't returned for Blood vs. Water, but she did. Colton is Colton, so I mean, there really wasn't much to consider here. Maybe Bill Posley, but it's like, at the end of the day, I'm good. Now from Philippines, we have a couple considerations. No one made the cut though. I did consider Katie Hansen. I've always liked Katie. I think Katie is another one of these players that had a lot of potential in terms of her seeming to play hard when she got onto the bottom and did a decent job putting the target onto Penner, but really at the end of the day, it's like she wasn't ever really going to do well, so left her off. And then the same thing goes for someone like an Angie, who had some fun character moments, but at the end of the day, didn't need to be on the cast. Now from Survivor, Caramoan had a couple considerations. First up, we got Matt. I think Matt is someone that, again, has a lot of potential within the game. I think he's someone that seems to be pretty good socially. I could see him being fine strategically. Like, I think if that fans tribe had been given a better shake in the game, I could definitely see Matt being a top contender on that season. But at the end of the day, for me, again, this cast was very tough to put together. I think if I was given like 30 slots on the cast, Matt probably would have made the cut. But down to 20, I just don't see him making it there. After that, I did consider someone like an Allie, who I think could have been a fun character and a fun player, but was taken out very early and really just gets remembered for her being in a Showmance with Reynolds, but she didn't make it on. But I did put someone from Caramoan in here, and I'm actually surprised that they made the cut, because this is someone that wasn't on my radar when I was initially making this video. But then I was like, you know what? Screw it. Let's put her on. And that person is Laura Alexander. And Laura Alexander, for me, is someone that we're never going to see back on Survivor again. But I think it's someone that like seemed to be very good strategically within the game, but was just looked at as a physical weakness, and because that was taken out of the game. But I think really for me personally, I would like to see her back. I would like to see her try to prove herself, especially because I feel like these sort of people that if you give them like 2 or 3 shots, they're going to do well at least one of those times. And I feel like Laura Alexander is someone that could do very, very well under certain circumstances within the game. But obviously this was a circumstance where she didn't do that well. But on return, I think it would be really fun. And I mean, she did get the last spot for the women on my cast here. I mean, it was really like her or some of the women that we'll be talking about later, but like at the end of the day, like some of those women that we'll be talking about later are probably more likely to return, so screw it. For my Dreamcast, let's put someone like a Laura Alexander on. Now for Blood vs. Water, the main consideration here for me was John Cody. However, I feel like, one, this male field is obviously pretty stacked, plus also it's like, John Cody, I feel like his time's kind of passed. I feel like we're at the point now where it's like, I'm not that interested in a John Cody return. Like, if they did bring him back, fine. I'm not upset. It's fine. But it's like, we're at the point now where I just feel like there's so many good recent pre-jurors that John Cody just kind of blends in with a lot of people. And I feel like if we are going to bring back a John on a more general all-star season, it's like, why not bring back like a John Mish, who I think is a more interesting version of John Cody. So it's like, at the end of the day, for me, John Cody is someone that I've kind of let go of any real chance of ever returning. From Survivor, Cagayan had a couple considerations. 2 people that did originally make my cast last time, I did consider Alexis. However, I decided not to put her on because, again, I would rather have some other people on. Again, I mean, like, you could switch out Alexis for Laura. It's fine. And I think in a realistic scenario, they would go for Alexis over, I mean, I don't even think Laura's in consideration. While Alexis has been in the casting pool for more recent All-Star seasons, but at the end of the day, do I need her back? Probably not. And would have put Cliff Robinson on my cast had not passed away. Rest in peace, Uncle Cliffy, but sadly, because of that, also not going to make my cut here. But someone that I actually thought had a lot of strategic acumen within the game, was able to build a following around him. I mean, had a very solid core group. And someone that I thought there was a chance that we would see him on Survivor at some point again, but obviously it was for naught. But the 2 people from Cagayan I did put on my cast. First up, same person as last time, I did put Bryce Isaiah. I just think Bryce is a great character, really fun personality, could be a good player. Now, I don't think he has like the best strategic mind in the world, but is competent enough to the point where it's like, yeah, let's just see him back. And the other person I put on the cast was Jatia, who was obviously a fantastic character on CAGAYAN. I mean, her dumping the rice, her getting into arguments with like Garrett and Cass, and really, I just think Jatia is one of the all-time great pre-merge characters, but also someone that like I never really needed to see back again. However, more recently, I mean, she's been more prominent in the Survivor community. She played Sequester, and I thought she was really fun during that, so I was like, you know what, screw it. For Dreamcast here, why not put Jatia on? And whether it goes good or bad, like more than likely she'll be entertaining either way. Now from Survivor, SAMOA and Lil Sur, only considered 2 people, but both of them did end up making my cut here. First up, we got Drew Christie, who I think is a fantastic character. Again, his downfall on that one episode is one of the best downfalls in the history of the show. And really, I just think he's someone that's so full of himself that he's always going to make really good TV. I think he's always going to play hard and probably burn out right away. But again, it's going to be really fascinating to watch. And for me, it was between him and like someone like a John Cody, or spoiler alert, someone like a Brendan from Ghost Island. But I just felt like while those two would be probably better players, I just feel like Drew Christie would be a much better character and would also probably play harder than both of those other two. So that's why Drew made the cut for me. And also from SAMOA and Lil Sur, I did also put on Val, who I think would also be a really fun returnee. I mean, even on her first season, I mean, she had some really fun moments there with her pretending that she had 2 idols and her really just like being put in a bad spot right off the bat with her being exiled and having to come in to her tribe late. Like, that's not great. So I think giving her a more fair shake on this season would be a lot more fun. I think she's also someone that's super competitive and super apt to play hard. So why not put Val Collins on the cast? Should be a lot of fun. Now from Survivor, 30 had a couple considerations as well. First up, we have Max Dawson, and Max Dawson for me was very close to making the cut. Really, it's between Max and the person I did put on the cast from this cast. And I mean, I could see putting Max on here, even over Drew. I think that's definitely a consideration, even over someone I did put on from later on the list. Like, I think Max is someone that, again, very close to making the cut. Definitely would have made the cut if I had more spots. And the person I did put on, though, is someone that I kind of forgot about until I was looking at all the pre-merge boots. I was like, how did I forget about this person? Because I love this person as a character and player the first time I saw him on TV, and that person is Vince Sly. And Vince Sly is, first up, an amazing character. I mean, just him being a coconut vendor already is like amazing, but also his rivalry with Joe and his relationship with Jen was just really awkward. Like, he's really just this weird character in Survivor history. Plus, also, he's someone that plays the game very, very hard. I mean, he's someone that, again, was trying to target Joe like right off the bat and was actually able to make an alliance with Will and Nina that seemed pretty strong right off the bat. And it's really due to miscommunication that Will ends up thinking that Vince is targeting him, and that Will ends up flipping his vote to take Vince out. Like, if it wasn't for that miscommunication, which, I mean, you still have to partially blame on him, but if it wasn't for that, Vince could have had a lot more potential within that game. So for me, Vince, like, while you initially think of him and say, oh, this crazy character, I also feel like he's someone that could have been a somewhat okay player. So for me, he made the cut here. From Co Wrong, I had some considerations. First up, you got Peter, who I thought was a fun character, like this big narcissistic character within his season. Could have been fun on return, but it didn't make it on. Consider someone like an Anna, who has pretty much just like lost her mind since she last played Survivor. And I think it would be kind of interesting to see how she's changed, but it's like, not really. I'm good. She didn't make the cut. And I also considered someone like Alicia, who's just given a really bad hand on that season. To be fair, like, I don't think Alicia ever does well on Survivor, but it would be interesting to see her back, but didn't make the cut here either. Now from Lambs vs. Gen X, they consider a couple people as well. Considered Figgy, and I considered Mari. Both people I wouldn't mind seeing back again. Both people that, if they ever did a cast like this, I think would definitely be in consideration for a season like this, but they didn't make the cut. And for me, it was either them or Laura. They were kind of fighting for the same spot. I mean, I think especially Figgy and Laura were fighting for the same spot, where Figgy did make my cut last time because I do think she's a much more realistic option, but I think Laura is someone that, again, isn't realistic, and because of that, I think she's more apt to make my dream cast here. Now from HHH, and I have the same returnees as last time. But also, they consider some people that wouldn't be in consideration in real life. Someone like a Patrick Bolton, I think, is another really just wacky, crazy character and would be interesting on a return, but didn't make the cut. Someone like a Rourke, I think, has a lot of potential within the game, but didn't make it either. And also someone like a Simone, who, again, doesn't have any real potential within the game, but I just think is a likable figure, but didn't make it on. So people from HHH that did make it on, again, same thing, got Alan Ball. I think Alan Ball is a fantastic character. I think he's someone that is a really frenetic character, someone that's always going to bring this like crazy energy to the game. So I think Alan would be a fun returnee. I also put on Jessica Johnson because I think Jessica has a lot of potential within the game and probably would have been better able to utilize that potential if she had not been caught up in her showmance at the time. And also I did put on Allie, as Allie's another one I think has a lot of potential within the game, seemed to have a pretty good mind for the game. She seemed to not be able to keep Ryan within her reins and through that lost control of the game, but still I think Allie is someone that has a lot of potential, so put her on my cast as well. Now from Ghost Island had a decent amount of contenders as well. I mentioned Brendan earlier. Again, Brendan was someone that was kind of in contention for that John Mish, Drew Christie sort of mold. And Drew Christie, to be fair, is very different from the other two, but I feel like it was his differences that actually made him more likely to be on my cast here. But Brendan's someone that I wouldn't mind seeing back. I think Brendan's someone that seemed to have a very good mind for a game. Obviously got tribe swapped into a very bad situation and seemed to have even an out there. So I think Brendan had some potential, but at the end of the day, didn't make my cut. Also, Jacob Derwin is someone that made my cut last time because I do think Jacob Derwin's a somewhat likely returnee if this were ever a theme that they were to go for. But for me, I just don't feel like Jacob has much potential within the game ever. I don't see him making it past the first few rounds in most situations. And even if he does, I don't feel like he's someone that people are going to seriously look at as a true contender within the game. I did also consider a Morgan, who I think has a lot of potential within the game from just a pure game standpoint, but I just don't know how good of a character she would be. So I left her off because of that, but I put 3 people from Ghost Island on this cast. First up, we have Bradley, and I think Bradley is a pretty fun character, pretty snarky person, and also someone that has a good strategic mind for the game. I think he's also probably one of the better pre-merge players in the sense that he was able to dominate his alliance and really get sniped out right before the merge because he is such a big threat in the game, which obviously is a mismanagement of his threat level, but still, I mean, I still think Bradley has potential within the game, so he made my cut. Also put on James Lim, who did make my cut last time. And I think James Lim is someone that I just think has a very, very strong strategic mind for the game. I mean, we see him execute the Morgan boot, which is an incredible blindside. And while he gets taken out pretty soon afterwards, after again getting a pretty bad swap, he was someone that was able to have a good chunk of allies around him that seemed to be loyal to him and was able to pull off pretty impressive strategic maneuvers. So again, he's someone I would like to see back. And also I did put on someone that will never be back, but someone I would like to see back, and that is Stephanie Johnson, who I loved when Ghost Island was airing. I thought she was an interesting character, but also someone, again, like seemed to have a pretty good mind for the game, seemed to be pretty well positioned on her initial tribe, and again, get swap screwed. And even then, didn't seem to be playing terribly after swap either. Like, I mean, I think Stephanie Johnson is someone that would have a lot of potential on a return. The problem is that she doesn't want to come back, and obviously that's very warranted considering the behind the scenes stuff that happened to her, but it is a shame because I do think she would be someone that'd be very well positioned on a return. Next up from David vs. Goliath, had a couple contenders. Did consider Lyrsa, who I think is a really fun character. The problem with Lyrsa for me is I just don't think she has much potential in the game, both just in the fact that I think she's going to be an early boot most times, but also I just don't think she knows the game that well. She didn't make the cut. Also considered Natalia, who I think is someone that probably has a lot more potential within the game and is also still a fun character, but really there weren't enough spots for her, and I just feel like there are other people who are more memorable than her. But the person from David vs. Goliath I did put on the cast, and really the last person that's on the cast as a whole, is Natalie Cole. And Natalie Cole, easy lock for a cast like this. I think she's a fantastic character, really an all-time great pre-merge character. Has the iconic moment with the jacket, gets into a lot of confrontations with people, really just completely unself-aware. And while she's not the greatest player in the world, and probably, again, one of these people that doesn't have much potential within the game, I think she's the best of these people that don't have much potential within the game. So for me, she ends up making the cut. And again, she is the last person to make the cast, but we might as well talk about some other contenders from the next 2 seasons as well. Edge of Extinction, considered Wendy. I think Wendy is a fun character, but didn't make it. And Reem is someone that I did put on last time. Again, with the elimination of first boots, I still considered like putting Reem on anyway, because again, Reem was on for more than just that one episode, but at the end of the day, I did cut her anyway. And then also, I Am the Idols, I did consider Jason Linden, Chelsea Walker, and Vince. all of which that I think are decent characters. I think Chelsea probably has the most potential in the game. I mean, Jason and Chelsea both have decent potential within the game, but neither of them made the cut for me. So there we go. I mean, that is my cast for Survivor Early Boots. From Survivor Africa, we have Clarence Black. From Survivor Guatemala, we have Brian Corden. From Survivor Panama, we have Misty Giles. From Survivor Cook, we have Cowboy. From Survivor Micronesia, Tracy Hughes Wolf. From Survivor Gabon, we have Ace Gordon. From Survivor Redemption Island, we have Stephanie Valencia. From Survivor Caramoan, we have Laura Alexander. From Survivor Cagayan, we have Bryce Isaiah Johnson and Jatia Hart. From San Juan del Sur, we have Drew Christie and Val Collins. From Survivor Worlds Apart, we have Vince Sly. From Survivor HHH, we have Alan Ball, Jessica Johnson, and Allie Elliott. From Survivor Ghost Island, we have Bradley, we have Stephanie Johnson, and we have James Lim. And from Survivor David vs. Goliath, we have Natalie Cole. Before we end the video, I might as well do the thing that I do in every Dreamcasting video, and that's compare this cast to my original cast. And right off the bat, there are 9 people that are the same as last time. I mean, you got Ace, Alan, Allie, Brian, Bryce, James, Jessica, Stephanie, and Tracy, who are all pretty big locks for me on both lists. I mean, I guess Ace is probably the more questionable one, as I do feel like Ace is probably someone that isn't super likely to return at this point, and also was, again, on the edge of making the list this time. So, I mean, that one's probably more questionable, but the other ones were pretty solidified. But yeah, I feel like I filled this list with a lot of like just unrealistic options. I mean, someone like a Vince Sly is never playing again. Someone like a Stephanie Johnson is never playing again. Drew Christie's never playing again. I mean, even like a Val Collins, I think is very unlikely to play again. Laura Alexander isn't playing again. Clarence doesn't want to play again. Cowboy doesn't want to play again. So again, that's a lot of the main reasons for the big changes here. Jatia is probably the big one here that is like, it's still probably a somewhat likely returnee and wasn't on my last cast for some reason. Well, like last time, obviously it was a more realistic cast. That's the point of those casting videos. So like people like a So Kim, who was in consideration a lot, and also that was before I got rid of the first Boots thing, but So Kim is someone that production seems to love for some reason, so she's always been in consideration for things. Figgy, I think, is someone that's somewhat in consideration. Jacob Derwin, same thing. Alexis Maxwell, even a John Cody, again, like those are more realistic options than the people I did put on my cast here. But at the end of the day, I do still think this is a pretty strong field. I mean, I even think the old cast was also a pretty strong cast as well. I mean, even if we got the old cast, I would not be opposed to that, but this cast is definitely tailored more so towards my personal preference. Again, you got a good mix of like wacky, zany characters and players, but there being a lot of people that have attributes of both. But there we go. I mean, that is my cast, my dream cast for Survivor Early Boots. Don't entirely know what the next Dreamcasting video will be. Starting to run out of old lists to run through for this. I could still do something like a Blood vs. Water or a Survivor Rivals, and like, I mean, there's a couple more, but really, this series might go on a bit of a hiatus in the near future. But for now, that's the video. Thank you for watching.